Welcome to the Across the Bar podcast, where we talk about how today's headlines impact your success at work. My name is Peter Rahbar. I'm your first call on legal issues.
And I'm Laura Brounstein. I am your first call on comms and content. How are you?
Laura, I'm so excited. I'm so happy to get my tariff rebate check. I'm already thinking about what I'm going to spend it on. It's been a great morning.
You're so excited to tell me all of the things that are wrong with the ways I use AI. That is where I thought.
Oh, well, I'm sure we have a segment about that coming up.
Heading towards like a real like Elizabeth Berkley, Jesse. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Why? Did you do something new with AI this week that I should know about? Maybe. That's a maybe face.
I didn't use it on a contract. It's
Oh,
fine.
God. What's wrong with you?
Okay, let's talk about our topic, and then you can tell me all the things that are wrong with me. Breaking news. Supreme Court ruled the tariffs are illegal. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about those nice guys at Goldman Sachs are making some really tough decisions. General tomfoolery among the White House staff and cabinet. Peter wants to talk about something related to the Major League Baseball union. A certain kind of employee activism we're seeing more of. And I think those are our main topics.
Yeah, I love...
And AI.
I love whenever sports is a topic, you go, Peter wants to talk about it, as if other people don't want to hear about it, you know. But I know it's not a part of your
I'm sure they do. Listen,
news dial.
I want the Yankees and the Knicks and the Giants to win. I just don't necessarily need to be there to see it.
Okay.
But like
Right.
I always want them to win.
Okay.
Okay, Supreme Court strikes down Trump's sweeping tariffs. Let's review for everybody how many of these justices were handpicked by Trump himself. How many, Peter?
Many. But
Kavanaugh,
Amy Comey-Barrett.
Comey-Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and there's a third one, right?
I think Gorsuch, right?
Right, Gorsuch.
Yeah. Well, he lost 6-3. I'm not surprised by this at all.
I'm looking to see how it broke out.
Gorsuch and Barrett and Roberts came over. But look.
You know what? Barrett, she's true to... I feel that Amy Coney Barrett is very true to what she believes is right. And she doesn't just vote with what the president wants just to do what he wants. I think she has challenged him on a couple things now. It's interesting to see.
She has, and she's gotten attacked for it from people on the right. But look, this decision literally just came out minutes before we started recording. We don't normally record on Friday, so this is a gift for us.
Maybe we knew in some way.
Yeah, maybe we knew. I mean, we knew it had to happen eventually, and Justice Jackson...
I didn't know if they would deem it unconstitutional. Like, you never know with this court. But
that's true. I mean, we got a little... we got a little clue last week when Justice Jackson said it takes a long time to write an opinion, which people interpreted as they're being very careful about writing an opinion, striking this down. And they did. And in essence, what they said, just to simplify
what's the legality here?
Was that, there was no express delegation from Congress for this taxing power, period. There's not language. Well, that taxing power belongs to Congress. That's part of separation of powers.
Yeah.
And for Congress to delegate that power to the executive, it has to be very explicit in the language, and it has to be supported by legislative intent.
Congress had not delegated the power.
No, there's nothing in the statute, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that said the president could have a tariff power for these reasons. And in the 50 plus years since passing this act, no president has used this act to levy any tariff. And so they talked about separation of powers in the majority opinion. They talked about legislative
intent. Still
intent.
into them, separation of powers.
Yeah, it still exists.
They're
That's
still,
great news.
Down for that.
Right.
Okay.
It's great news. Now, if you ask me, sort of, there's people debating.
He can't be arrested for anything, but he also can't just tax us willy-nilly. according to this Supreme Court.
Yeah, there's still some guardrails, apparently. And, I think it was what the president wanted to do, which is what he wants to do with everything, is just have total control. And he wants to be able to levy tariffs or take them away and make deals and all that crap. But the Supreme Court said that the drug flow into the country is not a basis to do this, and trade deficits are not a basis to do this. And the statute doesn't support it. Sorry, you're going to have to go through the process. There are other ways to do this, which involve hearings and an examination by Congress and approval that he doesn't want to go through. Yeah. So, too bad. And
so does this mean the tariffs go down immediately, or does this, what if Trump is like, nah, keeping them?
Well, that's a good question.
And how does it work logistically?
Well, he would. You're getting a little beyond my expertise here, but my thought would be, he would say they still exist. And
something at the Supreme Court.
Oh, probably never. Probably never. You don't need me to argue in the Supreme Court. You need one of those lawyers that charges $4,000 an hour to argue for you.
Wait, I'm paying you $3,000 an hour to record this.
Right.
That was a joke. Go on.
Yeah, good. So they could say they still exist and try and charge people for it, but people won't pay it, and then there'll be lawsuits. I don't know. I mean, my hope is they just follow it.
If someone has stuff coming into the Port of Los Angeles this morning,
right,
will they have to pay a tariff on it?
They shouldn't have to. So
they shouldn't have to immediately, right?
Right. I mean, I assume if they still try and impose the tariff, that there would be an immediate action citing this case, and the court would say you can't do that, period. So let's hope they don't put people through further, and companies through further, unnecessary actions.
They haven't put out statements at all on this yet that I've seen.
No, but there's been statements over the past couple of weeks, including from, one of the many villains, Scott Besson, saying there are other means to do this. But, the other means are not going to be appealing to the president. They involve congressional approval.
Besson was one of those, when this administration was being formed, people were like, oh, well, he's really smart. He's somebody we can count on, Besson. People who knew him from the Wall Street world were impressed with him. And he's just that dopey guy who was I don't want these laws to hurt mom and pops who only have 5 houses.
Dopey is the last word I would use to describe him. The guy seems like a complete asshole.
Okay.
There you go. That's my conclusion.
When he was the soybean farmers, my family really
he's just another out-of-touch billionaire with a government job telling us how we should live our lives, that we should spend less on gifts and vacations, etc. And he does whatever he wants. He doesn't care about
tell us things
people.
Yeah. Okay, so this seems like another case where public sentiment is prevailing, even though obviously this wasn't a direct cause and effect that public sentiment affected the Supreme Court's decision. But the fact is, the majority of Americans have shown their dissatisfaction with the tariffs, poll after poll, and here we are getting rid of them. Do you think this is kind of part of the larger sweep?
Well, I would say certainly they're unpopular. But there are people, I've talked to people who say, well, tariffs are a good thing. I'm glad he did them. And if you believe that, then I would just say follow the laws in implementing them. Fine. If Congress examines the economic basis for imposing the tariffs and agrees that they're a good idea, they have the power to impose them. Fine.
And the people who have said they're a good idea, they're not Chinese soybean farmers? The people
there's really smart
Chinese soybean farmers would think the tariffs are a good idea.
Look, trade deficits are a problem. But let's have a discussion and figure out a rational way to deal with them. Let's not leave it in the hands of one person. That's not what the Constitution says.
Do you think there is a chance that not liking the tone a foreign leader uses is not the best basis for tariff decisions? Because isn't that how we made our decisions around Switzerland, that he didn't like her tone?
Well, that's certainly something that worked against him in the litigation. I mean, the willy-nilly imposition of tariffs totally undercuts the argument that they were being done for drugs or for trade debt. Canada tweeting something that you don't like and then you responding by imposing tariffs, like, just totally undercuts your argument.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
let's hit some of our other topics that are showing the will of the people.
Yeah.
So we've seen some real corporate disobedience this week. I guess we can say pushback from two, spunky young upstarts, Stephen Colbert and Anderson Cooper. Stephen Colbert aired his interview with James Tallarico, who is running in the Texas senatorial primary against Jasmine Crockett. Stephen Colbert aired that interview on YouTube because he was told not to air it, according to him, on CBS. And Anderson Cooper made the decision to part ways with 60 Minutes, which, as you know, is part of CBS, Bari Weiss's CBS. And he'll now only be with CNN. So these are
for family reasons.
Yeah.
For family reasons.
Right?
By the way, I represent a lot of people who make statements about why they leave jobs, and family reasons is a great one to cover up something else. It's usually not the reason, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not a reason to leave 60 Minutes, which is considered to be the,
He also does like one segment a year. So like, what were we talking about?
The pinnacle of journalism.
Well, it was. I don't think it is up there anymore. You?
Well, yeah. I mean, still an excellent show, but it's being tinkered with, right? And
how excellent a show is it if they're not allowed to edit interviews? I mean, Carolyn Levitt has been making very clear to anybody that interviews the president that she does not want to see any edits. That is not how journalism works. It's insane. And that's making these things not good shows.
Except when he flubs things or calls people the wrong names or falls asleep. You could edit all those out. Look, we've been talking the last few weeks about how employers should watch out for employee activism. And we talked about Minnesota and how that was an indicator and people would look to that. I think what happened at CBS this week is another indicator of that. And again, people are being told to believe something that's not true. And Stephen Colbert has no problem speaking out, was told by his lawyers not to air this interview because it's potentially going to anger the FCC and Brendan Carr, and who said he's going to invoke a rule against talk shows that hasn't been applied in decades. And so
just to clarify, the way that broadcasters get their license to broadcast over the airways is to agree to certain rules of conduct that are supposed to make them a tool for nonpartisan information dissemination, and that is giving two parties equal time. It's doing public service content. There's a few different things that broadcast networks need to do to keep their license.
Right, and the FCC gives them these licenses and reviews them from time to time when they come up for renewal. But this equal opportunities rules was not enforced against late night talk shows and daytime talk shows. And now Brendan Carr, the supposed advocate for free speech, someone who before coming into power just couldn't stop saying free speech, free speech, free speech, is now trying to regulate speech pretty heavily. And, Stephen Colbert spoke out against it. And the interview, by the way, got probably 3 or 4x the views it would have gotten on air. So on the one hand, you could say, well, they got the audience. People saw it. What's the problem? The problem is, the government's trying to regulate what you hear and see.
And not everybody is going to take Stephen's approach. Right.
And so we also have, the potential Paramount acquisition of Warner Brothers, and Paramount, who owns CBS, not wanting to draw the ire of the government. And so Brendan Carr's, acting in an area where he really shouldn't be. There's no need. There's no problem that requires his intervention in late night talk shows. He's doing it because he wants to regulate what we hear and what we see. And he's also going after The View. And notably, he's not going after any conservative talk shows that would have the opposite issue.
So, he has been like Megyn Kelly.
Right. So, well, she's not on broadcast stations, but look, for employers, again, this is another example. You got to be, hi Annabelle, you got to be so aware of what's happening right now in our society. Employees are seeing these examples and they're saying, well, if something happens at work and I don't like it, well, I got to speak out. That's how I'm going to, and I got to get my colleagues to speak out. They're going to see it.
You have to see something. We say in women's world circles a lot, and you have to see that you can stand up and it can work, to your point.
Right. And so.
But also, this is a good time to explain a comms phenomenon known as the Streisand effect. And the Streisand effect was when Barbara Streisand tried to keep people from filming her wedding and tried to keep people from seeing footage that somebody managed to get. She sued to keep it squashed, and that ended up giving it a huge platform, and everyone saw the footage because she was trying to keep it out of the public eye. So the Streisand effect is when you try to dampen something and end up broadcasting it to more people. And that seems like pretty much what happens with the Tallarico situation.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're not that sophisticated, to be honest.
No,
they're just bullies.
James Tallarico. Now everybody was like, what's this guy saying?
Yeah, bullies.
Yes. And listen, I'm a big Jasmine Crockett fan. But this is a nice thriving democracy moment where we've got a heated primary. And
you almost said it. You almost said heated rivalry. You almost said it.
I did, but I pulled out. Blocked the goal there.
Okay. Let's just cut that before it gets any further.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I think we definitely saw the Streisand effect. Everyone watched that Tallarico interview, and, we want a heated primary, which we're seeing.
We're going to have a lot of them. Guess what, everyone? We're going to have a lot of them. So it'll be fun.
It's a good thing. And on the other side of thing, though, we're seeing lots of pushback and lots of kind of energy of the people getting its voice at the moment. But those nice kids over at Goldman Sachs are getting rid of any DEI requirements or goals for filling board seats. So whereas in the last 10 years, it has been a goal for public companies to build more diverse boards, yet they haven't really. Now it won't even be a goal. So expect to see a lot of white men on corporate boards.
Expect. They're already there.
Expect to continue to see corporate boards run by white men.
Right. So this made some headlines this week because Goldman said we're not going to have any more DEI guidelines for our board members. And quick scan of the Goldman website, 2 out of 14 board members are persons of color. 5 out of 14 are women. And who
they recommend for the board of directors for their clients, isn't it? Than for themselves. When they're
I think it implies always, and obviously they have a lot of influence. And then their executive team is 8 people, all white. And so there's been a lot of uproar about the ruining of our society by DEI guidelines, which are not quotas. They're very different. They're just principles that say we want to be more diverse and we should be more diverse. And people said this has ruined our society and our companies, and companies are less profitable because of it. And the reality is nothing really changed that much. And these executive teams, you could go through banks and just find white executive teams all over the place, and mostly white male executive teams. And you look at private equity firms, and it's even worse. So, and it's important to have diversity on boards because they are the ones who hold executives accountable and provide different perspectives and opinions on business strategy and corporate policies. And so it's important to have diversity there. So the companies who take it seriously are going to continue to, have a diverse set of opinions and people.
Let's also just remind everyone that the reason to take it seriously, the reason you want DEI is that the numbers prove out that companies with more diverse boards do better. Every study of this shows the more diverse your board is, the higher your profit is. And yet, that argument of very clear numbers has not really been engaging. They don't want to make more money. Or they think, well, in my case, that's not the case. That's not it.
Yeah, and look, some people say, quite shamefully, I think, that you're taking lesser people to meet DEI, aspirations. And I'd say you look at the people on Goldman's board, the persons of color who are on Goldman's board, they're very qualified, very impressive individual. I mean, they certainly did not, cut their standards to select these people. So Goldman is obviously a leader in the industry. What they do makes an impression and people follow their lead. So to do this, it's not just an implication on what they're doing for their own board. It's other financial institutions, other companies look at it and say, well, it's okay for us to do that too. And, hey, maybe we weren't so serious about this in the first place. So it's dangerous. It has, a follow-on effect that is important. And I would just argue, like I always have, it's important for executives to have different opinions in the room when you're making decisions.
It's very important. And the problem, we were making some headway on the pipeline. The problem with having diverse leadership in boards is one of the issues has been that there hasn't been enough of a pipeline of people in those communities getting the right education and experience to be able to be on boards. And in the last 10 years, we've made some strides in terms of strengthening those pipelines. There have been programs to help diverse communities, women and others, to, get the education and the jobs, the experience, mentors, the sponsors that they need to be good board members. And these things happening now, we're dismantling that pipeline again. And so this problem is just going to continue.
And I would add, a lot of those programs were additive to what existed. They were not replacing. It's not like a company said, well, we're going to have an internship only for Black applicants and we're shutting down our white applicant internships. It was additive.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. I mean, I've expressed my feelings about it in prior episodes. I don't know what the problem is we're solving with people shutting down DEI problem.
I think the problem is white people not wanting to have to hire non-white people.
Well, I think the bigger problem is corporate leaders don't want to be told what to do by anybody. And that's part of the reason why they elected this president and supported it. And, and now he's totally up their asses.
Interventionist president I've ever seen. Like Ronald Reagan would not recognize this as a Republican administration. Right. He's all getting in there and telling companies what to do, like CBS, honestly.
Yep.
Gross. Okay. This is your big moment, Peter.
Speaking of gross.
Tell me about the ruling this week on AI.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about something else. But this is a big moment for me, I have to say, because
your job,
as I announced on Instagram on LinkedIn last week, one of my biggest pet peeves is when clients or potential clients come to me with summaries they've prepared using AI about the different claims they have and why they have a great case and things that I should do that I'm allegedly not doing on their behalf. And I always say to them, what are you doing? Are you putting like your employment contract and the fact that you were fired and all these facts into ChatGPT or some other program? And they're like, yes, we are. And
who would do that?
And I'm like, look, this is highly sensitive and confidential information. You should not be putting it in an LLM that's open, okay? And a court, and also
have a membership.
Don't start with this.
Private access. Well, I'm just going to say it out loud.
Don't start with this because the next part of this is very important. You should listen. The next part of it is, and I also tell them it's not privileged. If we ever dispute, like it's probably not going to be privileged. And until this week, court had not ruled on it, but a court in New York this week said that these summaries and notes that an individual prepared and then sent on ChatGPT and then sent to their lawyer were not privileged and open for discovery. So the other side had full access to their summaries, their timelines, their analysis.
They sent it, or do they also? I mean, they have full access to go into their computer also.
Well, they have access to the output. They have access to what was input. They have access to the search terms, the prompts that were used.
Obviously, if it's your work computer, this is even dumber.
Obviously. So Look, don't do it. I'm telling you, if you have a potential legal claim, and I talk to people all the time who are like, I go back and forth on ChatGPT about this, and I've developed this case. And I'm like, don't do that, because it's probably not going to be privileged, and also it's probably going to be wrong. And people come to me with claims that are they're like super weak, like tangential, like legal claims. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a claim, but no one ever asserts it.
Do you think anybody's going to be pushing back on appealing this ruling about privilege?
I think if they do, they will probably make the same argument that you made, which is if someone has a closed loop sort of LLM they're working with, then the information is not being shared with anyone beyond that person and their computer. So it should be privileged. That would be the argument. But I think what the court said is you shared it into this LLM, which could share it with anybody. So there's nothing privileged about it. It's like, very simply, if I had a meeting with you as your lawyer and you brought in a third party who had nothing to do with the case, that would wipe out the privilege. So,
whoa. All right, you are my lawyer. If you and I are emailing about a contract I have, and then I like CC someone to be like, oh, this girl worked there before. She, what's this like? And she's on the email thread with us. What you and I are saying to each other is still privileged, though, right?
Not if you're bringing in a third party who has nothing to do with the case. I mean, that's...
Really?
Yeah, if there's a dispute. So, look, I would just counsel people to be really careful. I'm working with a client right now who, used ChatGPT to generate a bunch of contracts, and now there's a dispute, and frankly, the contracts suck, and we're in a bad position because of it, and he's really regretting his decision about it. So, I would say with legal stuff, you got to be really, really careful. I mean, I'm not just saying that to preserve my job in society. I'm saying that because as a public service announcement, because I'm a nice guy.
And you're even nicer when people are paying you.
Some people would say I'm not. I don't know. I have no idea. I try to be.
As a co-host than as a lawyer. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Okay, now the one you're really excited about. Something to do.
But is also gross.
Oh, I don't even know what this is about. Major League Baseball Union. What are we talking about?
Yeah, the head of the Major Baseball Players Association, Tony Clark, resigned this week suddenly because it was revealed that he was having an affair with his sister-in-law, who worked for the union. So it's a couple levels of problems there. And it's notable.
Isn't that like the cliche about the union, that like the union boss like finds jobs for his whole family in the union? Yeah,
there's a lot of cliches here, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, there was a great debate on the internet about, which type of sister-in-law is worse to have an affair with. But yes, I mean,
what are the different types?
Like, is it your brother's wife or your wife's sister?
I think that's worse. Your wife's sister is worse.
Yeah.
Or your brother's wife.
I think both are pretty bad.
Your wife's sister is worse.
I think both are pretty bad.
Yeah. Okay.
But also being the head of a union, hiring family members, obviously companies have nepotism policies, policies around hiring family members. If you don't, you should think about it. But in a union environment, that's really not it. Unions are actually highly regulated, and they should be, paying more attention to these things. And, this was tripped up in a separate investigation around the union. And this was like a separate detail that came out, and it was then investigated and confirmed. And so he resigned. Notable because not only the nature of the allegations, but the Players Association is about to embark in negotiations for a new contract with MLB. MLB is at the height of its popularity in recent times, so it's going to be a very big contract, very contentious. And to lose, the director right before the season starts, right before the negotiation starts.
Have they named a new person yet?
Yeah, the number 2 is now the interim executive director. So it's going to be a pretty tough negotiation. Also related, I'll let you know because you're probably not following, is a topic we talked about before, the WNBA negotiations.
Oh, yeah.
And those are hopefully reaching final days, but the parties are really far apart on the issue of how much of the profits and the revenue should the players get, and what should the salary cap be for the teams. And as we said several episodes ago about this, the popularity of the sport has exceeded its financial development, and the players will never be paid market by the league. They'll get their market value through endorsement deals and other things. But the league salaries are shockingly low. I mean, the teams were operating with a $1.5 million salary cap.
Why Brittany Griner was playing basketball in Russia.
Right.
Because they can't actually make a living just sticking in the U.S., most of them.
Right.
Unless they get paid so little at the WNBA.
Right. And for the WNBA, this is a huge problem because there are rival leagues that are paying.
Not monetized. Like, people are not paying as much money. There's not as much endorsements. There's just not as much money in WNBA as NBA.
Oh, it's coming. I mean, it's coming pretty fast. I mean, the top stars in WNBA have their own sneakers. They have a ton of endorsement deals.
Clark worth now?
I mean, she's like one of the most famous athletes in the world now. I mean, that's like not in dispute. So we'll see. It'll be tough. I mean, it'll be a really tough decision. Hopefully there's not a disruption in the season, but it's coming to a head.
I want to go back to the guy who stepped down from the MLB. Because there is a lot of tomfoolery going on right now by
you think?
People in power. And I'm not going to just say men because it's not just men. Last week we saw that really spectacular article about Kristi Noem and the sex she seems to be having with Corey Lewandowski on a plane that the U.S.
Allegedly.
Our tax dollars are buying at the rate. How much is that plane? $70 million?
Well, look, they're allegedly buying a plane to.
My Ford EcoSport cost $17,000, and this plane is costing $70 million. She has a nicer ride, obviously. And what in the heck? Why does she need her own plane? And did you see that Trump was like, "Yeah, I don't know anything about it."
That's a standard response. I mean,
and
obviously.
Then we had that cabinet secretary's husband. Talk about that?
Department of Labor's husband has been banned from entering the Department of Labor because he's sexually assaulted two staffers. She's also under investigation for having an affair with one of her security people and misappropriating funds. Yeah, look, we could.
If this was a public company rather than the public sector, would these people still be in their jobs?
No. I mean, that's the shocking thing here. I mean, you could say this is politics, but it's not. I mean, this is just pretty straightforward. These people did these things in companies, they'd be fired immediately. If a corporate executive was having an affair with a company employee and their husband, that first of all, that would be enough to get them fired, okay, with a subordinate. But if you add in that their husband was sexually assaulting employees, they'd be out immediately. There's just no.
This is a grown man who is so handsy he can't go into a public place of work.
And it's on video, allegedly. I mean, so
what
is
wrong with people?
Right, and then we talk about the Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. This is a jet that's allegedly being purchased to transport detainees. Well, pictures came out this weekend. This jet is like a beautiful private jet with 2 bedrooms. It's definitely not being used for detainees. I mean, people, like, you could tell them it is, but they're going to look at the pictures. And so you talk about misappropriation of funds. Like, I've seen people fired for misappropriating $100.
And then you've got Kash Patel. Look what he's doing. Using misappropriating funds to, like, go see his girlfriend in concerts.
He's going to fly in a private jet to go see the U.S. Olympic hockey team.
To your point, that like put in a receipt for a dinner they shouldn't have, and
so look, this just fuels further anger, right? Like, and people can identify with these issues because there are people who've been fired over very petty expense violations or misappropriation of funds or not getting approval for corporate expenditures. Like, the fact that the government just not taking action on any of these things is pretty shocking. But you should not operate your workplace this way. If you have policies,
hey, it's working for them, it won't work for you.
If you have policies, you need to follow them. You need to follow them equally. If people are assaulting your employees, you need to deal with it immediately. Employee safety is
and that is good rule of thumb in general.
I mean, employee safety is paramount.
Find ways to discourage it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, try not to be so political about these things. Just look at them straight on and say, what the hell is going on here?
Cool.
And why am I paying for it?
Yeah, why am I paying? And this is the thing that I think Trump thinks people don't understand. Like, he's suing the Justice Department for how much? 10 billion? What is that? Did he sue the Justice Department for?
Right.
And he thinks people don't understand that, like, my hard-earned tax dollars might go to pay him off. Oh.
What about the 10 billion he just transferred to the Board of Peace yesterday?
Jesus.
I mean, where's it coming from? What's it being used for?
Starving children. And did you also see that this Board of Peace is the always ruler? He is
right.
in
Even after he leaves office.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't get into the Board of Peace.
Okay,
it's too like Batman, like evil empire. Like it's
Let's
insane.
do heroes and zeros.
Heroes and zeros. Who's your zero?
Okay, my zero is Mr. Carl, the lovely young man that testified before Congress this week about the need to protect white civilization.
Oh.
He talked about being a white national and that he was not going to apologize for saying that the white culture needs to be protected and maintained. Now, he didn't really go into what white culture meant, because did it include Irish immigrants, Italian immigrants, even Jewish immigrants? He didn't really specify, but he just seemed real confident that the white people needed protecting. This is abhorrent, absurd. The culture of America has always, yes, in history, it was a lot European and Judeo-Christian. But it has also always changed, and people were terrible to every wave of immigrants as they came in, but not usually as terrible as we're being right now. I think this is just, like, deplorable.
Well,
to quote Hillary.
Marco Rubio basically said the same thing with nicer words and got a standing ovation. I don't know what's going on.
I didn't even see that.
We can't even get into it.
All right,
Watch his Munich speech.
Okay.
You'll see the same thing. My zero is Meta, and we didn't talk about the trial that's going on in California right now about social media and the impact on children.
Mark testified.
Their negligence. But one very specific aspect of it, I mean, his testimony yesterday was ridiculous. But one very specific aspect of what happened in the courtroom yesterday is my zero, where a bunch of Meta employees came into the courtroom wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses to like record the trial and make clips. Like, come on. And they were admonished by the judge immediately.
It was like
have some respect.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Are you kidding?
Losers.
Losers.
Plus, people who wear those glasses, loser move.
Loser. As Professor Galloway says. They're not going to make people...
Have you ever talked to someone wearing those glasses? I mean...
I don't know.
I wanted to punch them in the face, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm not that type of person.
Just triggered by dorky, intrusive glasses.
Yeah, definitely. Who's your hero?
Two different heroes today.
Great.
First one, Eric Dane.
Oof.
Talented, so handsome. ALS is such a tragic disease. And he really kept working till the end. I think he got much more awareness for the disease, and he was very handsome and brave and talented.
It's a horrible disease, and it's striking how quickly it impacted him. I have a very good friend, Aaron Lazar, who's also an actor and who did some work with Eric Dane over the past few months, who was diagnosed with ALS a few years ago. And Aaron's done incredible work with the Broadway community, with the broader acting community to bring awareness and raise money. But it's a vicious disease with no cure. I mean, it's
seems like the most
horrific.
Tragic. And then my other, I know we don't usually do two, but I've got to just say, Princesses Bridget and Eugenie, we are all with you. Poor girls, your whole life you have kept your chin up high while your parents have embarrassed you. And this with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor being arrested yesterday.
Did you see that picture of him in the car? It was amazing.
I feel terrible for the princesses. Beatrice and Eugene. I've met them. They're lovely people. And I just wish them good friends and other family around them as they get through this latest nightmare that one of their parents have caused them.
We're going to bring some princesses on the pod? Is that what you're saying? You're tight? Is part of your girl posse?
Another day, I will tell the story of having Sarah Ferguson and her daughters on the cover of Ladies' Home Journal and how it was one of the worst shoots of my life, and also Harvey Weinstein was involved. But
ooh,
for another day.
Yikes. Okay, that's
bet.
loaded. My heroes are the people in Hutchins, Texas, and Chester, New York, who resisted ICE buying or leasing warehouses in their towns to detain immigrants. The Hutchins facility was going to hold 9,500 people. I think the Chester, New York facility was going to hold up to 2,000 or 3,000. The people rallied and stood up against this. The owners of the facilities, one was even a Trump donor, refused to lease these facilities to ICE for this purpose. I mean, these detention camps.
Gotta love when NIMBY comes through.
Yeah, people, this is activism, people standing up. And it works, it's working. And, part of this administration's tactic is just to just flood the zone. Just flood the zone with everything. So you don't, these are important stories that were barely even heard this week. So the people in those towns, great job. Keep up. We appreciate what you did. Yeah.
And the people of Tilly, people who live near the ICE detention center that is holding all the kids in Texas, Tilly, just if there's something you can do to rise up, maybe try it, because that is horrifying.
Anyway, off we go into the weekend.
It's snowing where I am. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Snowing up there, raining in New York, although we have another potential snowstorm coming, so who knows. But thanks to everyone for listening and watching Across the Bar. Please subscribe, share. Thank you, Sadie, for editing, and we'll see everyone next week.